This is the deck of the tarot cards, and what I want you to do is to put your energy into the deck. And if there's a pressing question that you have in this session, put that into the deck too by putting your energy in it. I want you to shuffle the cards. You can mush them or you can shuffle them. And when you've shuffled enough, divide them into 3 piles, and then I'll pick them up.
All right.
I'm going to lay out the cards that you have shuffled. And this first card is going to represent you. And in this particular moment in time, in all your lifetimes, this moment in time, and this is going to represent you. It's a major card. When a major card comes up first, it's telling you that we're doing a very significant reading. And the card that's come up is the Chariot. And that is like sometimes the messenger from above, but it's also sometimes your ability to become one with the energies of the sun in every day. That's as if the sun were in a chariot, okay? So this is going to represent you in this particular reading. And the next card will be what challenges, or what protects you in this situation. Another major card. So you have the Chariot working as an agency, and you have the Emperor protecting you. And that is the sense of organization about any community that you live within. And the next card will be the card that challenges you in this particular operation, okay? And that is the 6 of Wands, the Lord of Victory. So if you're the hero working for the Emperor, and your challenge is to become the Lord of Victory, I think it's all playing out in your favor. Now we go further. The first thing we'll lay out is the threshold of the doorway that you have to step across, okay? And it's another important card. Like the hero in the Chariot is the hero of swords. So that part of the challenge here is to be willing to be, let's say, combative, to take on something to be able to solve it, all right? The card over here is essentially what's passing in this world, and it's upside down. It's the sun upside down. So it's like, you might say, the sun eclipsed, but we would read about that later, okay? This is what's coming in the near future, and again, it's a major card upside down. There's a particular element within this reading that we're laying out that's important to realize, is that we've had quite a bit of major cards, and that's symbolic. It's like if we open the door to your guidance, spiritual guidance, they're saying, this is important. This is an important time, and you have an important message or vision issue that you have to do. And this is what crowns you in this situation. This is the 6 of Cups, and it's called the Lord of Pleasure, upside down. It's probably telling you, essentially, you have to learn to enjoy what you're doing. It ain't just work. Okay? Now, as we walk through the doorway, this would be this gesture of the cards moving. This is your opinion of yourself. And it's an upside down card, but it's the King of Cups. Again, part of the energy of the material that you are evidencing at this point is going to be emotional, okay, in these respects. And you have a mission. Okay, this is as other people see you. They see you as the Queen of Swords. Okay, and it's kind of interesting. It's like really someone who is in charge of forces that could destroy each other. And this would be your hopes and fears in this particular time. And it's the 4 of the material plane, the Lord of earthly power. That's your hopes and fears. On the surface, you would say that in terms of power, you would hope that it would be a benefit to everyone, the society that you live in. There's a lot of personal dedication to social activity here. And you would hope that power would protect and be a benefit to people. Your fear is that power is interested in money. That's pretty simple. And this would be the evidence of the first step through this gateway. And it's another major card. And when you have a card that's called Death in Life, that's very specific. It's not about death. It's like being willing in an initiation to die to the person you were to reawaken to the new individual. It's kind of like an age-old message to people who were being initiated into any of these secret organizations or into Christianity. It's like you convert. You die to the old life and you're born to the new. And that was the ritual that every pharaoh did on his jubilee on top of the pyramid at Saqqara. They would have him go up on the pyramid. He'd sit in this throne at the sun at its height. They would sing to him, and he'd get up, walk over, sit down on the other throne, and for Egypt, he would be reborn. So you're going to do the same thing. You're going to be the agency for your own rebirth and initiation, but you're going to find yourself an agent for a rebirth of opinion with most of the people you come into association with, whether it's family or community or whatever. We apparently are living in times when faith as it exists may not be the answer. Die to one faith and born to another. So that would be the simplest way to look at this without going deeper into each of the readings in this. And when I would add into it, as I asked you earlier about the meaning of your first name, all of our first names have a certain meaning, and that will go with us in time. And that there's also a reference to your astrological sign. So if your major sign is Scorpio and your rising sign is Capricorn, the work of your rising sign is in the latter part of your life. The work of your major sign above is the whole conditioning that brings you to the point of initiation. Once you acquire the initiation, you begin to work with your rising sign. That's another awakening that we think of. So if you think of it, the cards are not just giving us possibilities for looking for what's happening in the present and what's going to happen in the future. It's also talking a lot about what's happened, how you got here. And sometimes the cards will impress us to talk about a past life, because you may be continuing an adventure that started another time. All right? My feeling is that there's a lot of not just major cards in the tarot, but there's also these face cards at work here, so that there's a lot of work involving you in the mission, but also sending you people who are influential in other areas and allowing you to integrate with them. So that's all part of this happening. And the happening now is not just your need, but there's a need in the community and in, we would say, the earth community, human community. If you keep your mind on the fact that you've been blessed with the name for Andros, humankind, that's going to be a part of your mission through this whole life, is that you feel a responsibility for humanity, you know? And to some extent, your work is also a dedication, as in this Queen of Swords, as other people see you, as a person who is looking to give definition or redefinition to the female in the community as a responsible individual. And the communities we're living in this culture are beginning to turn over the raising of a family to women anyway. So being a guide and being a help to people who have the responsibility for the next generation is part of your mission. It's very admirable and challenging at the same time. But you have so many guides behind you. And these major cards are all relative to those guides. And to some extent, when you see a card upside down like this, it's saying to you that there may be a negative effect that you've been working with here and that you may still have to work with here. But the symbolism is interesting, because here again is the sun at work, which is the blessing of the everyday. And the thing that's coming into working in the future is the universe. So it's like you could be working on this block and next week you're doing the whole world. But that's the mission. So my feeling is, just looking at this initially and very essentially, there is a tremendous amount of indication of mission here. And for yourself, both with this blessing and with this opinion of yourself, you're looking for emotional involvement and satisfaction. I don't know if satisfaction is the right word, but it's like an emotional commitment, to some extent, is more honest than playing at it, which a lot of politics would do. So my feeling is that in a very preliminary look at the reading that you have here, we could have gone with a different reading, but this is the one we said yes to. And this is very strong, and it's very directed. And if it is the sense of mission and the sense of identity that you've been pursuing up till now, well, fine. What it's also telling you about is something about the general feeling in the earth, in the world, with human beings, that there is a need for change, and there is a need for a recognition of humanity, and there's a need for a recognition of the mission in the advantage of every day. It's like looking for the light from the position that we did our initial layout in, so that we've located the gateway of this piece of time. We've put you in the gateway with your guidance and your challenges, all right? We've made a run which includes a kind of emotional recognition of yourself and your purpose in life. And I think that what I was speaking to you about in between was accomplishing essentially your own initiation. And I did ask you who was the influence from your parental side. And if it's your father, then you've taken on his mission to some extent. The other thing that comes into play with this initial layout that we have here is the overreaching on all of this of your zodiac sign. So that if your primary sign that you were working with through most of your life up till now is Scorpio. Scorpio is, in the Egyptian form, is a goddess with a scorpion on her head. And she's essentially there to point out when you've varied from truth into fantasy. And she's the reminder to tell people that that's not necessarily true, okay? And to remind people when they're living in falsehood. So if you think of it, the scorpion is kind of a little stinger that comes and wakes you up. But to some extent, it also indicates that you're going to feel this necessity to help people get out of fantasy about themselves, and to welcome and cultivate the character that they have chosen to come into this life for. So when I'm looking at the cards, my feeling is that the major cards look rather obvious to me, and a few comments has been enough to put them in place. But I'd like to go and look at some of the number cards. And my habit from the beginning of this card reading business has been not to try to memorize all this material, whether it's upside down or right side up. That's important, but I don't intend to memorize it all. So my practice is to open my book to the unit and to ask the sentence on the page that's most appropriate to come to me. Now, if that's mystical, I suppose, that's asking for guidance. But that's the way I operate. And I wouldn't read all of the material, but I had to take note of the fact that certain cards are upside down, because that means that if it's right side up, to my mind, you're more or less in charge. If it's upside down, it's there to teach you something. It's a challenge. So the first thing that I would look at in this, I think the first two cards that you have out here, the Chariot, is the hero, and it is also relative to the sun. Both of these cards have to do with a sense of recognition of enlightenment. I think that the main challenge, the thing that I would like to address, is the card that I would say is your challenge in this particular thing, and it's the Six of Wands, and it's called the Lord of Victory. As I was saying, I think that victory means different things to different people. Sometimes a victory means that you have totally defeated somebody. It's like, I'm going to stop him by shooting him. That's a kind of victory. The other kind of victory that your tradition would inspire you to is to make your victory someone else's victory too, or a unit victory. And so my attempt to look at this would be to look at my unit here. It has to do with winning, but not always in the usual sense of I'm the winner. Give me the prize. I won the day. Blah blah blah. The kind of victory that you're symbolizing and that you will define for people is a unit victory. Okay, and it's a recognition that to some extent the strife we've experienced shouldn't make us angry with our idea of God, but should remind us that it's educational. And from this strife, whether it's weather or disease or whatever, when we come out of it, we're in a better place. And I think that when I see it here as a challenge to you, it doesn't necessarily mean it's your challenge. It is your ability to recognize the challenge in front of everybody, because you've accepted the mission somewhere along the line, okay? And the other line that jumps at me is called pleasure in labor. And learning to recognize the fact that for certain individuals of a persuasion, you never retire. And that a lot of our identity and the joy in our life comes from the work we do. And instinctively whether you're a worker or somebody who's running away from work. You know what I mean? So my feeling is that part of your mission is not only your victory, but to instill the sense of victory that is other than winning. It's beneficial, So I think it's a very good reference to this. The fact that you're the hero in the Chariot working for the emperor is also kind of a plus. You see what I mean? But it shows you that you have a mission that is more than just an ordinary person's daily life. It's greater than that. You have a sense of maybe not the world, but on the idea of an emperorship, whatever, that you could benefit the system that we're a part of. And there is something in your mission that is more than just physically defeating or winning people over. It is emotional. And that's why I feel that the next card that I would look at would be this Cups, the Six of Cups. You're going from the Six of Wands to the Six of Cups, because this is what crowned you, and it's upside down. Okay? So it has to do with the Lord of Pleasure. And my feeling is that when it crowned you, it really is a crowning that other people recognize. And to some extent, you have been able to define for yourself what the meaning is in the word of pleasure. And you've also been instrumental in awakening other people to the meaning of pleasure in the life. and whether they feel that the life is the life they've invented and witnessed, or whether they've had to kowtow to everybody else's rules, they may not have found a way to make that a pleasure. But you have a way, and they recognize it, that you can show them how to find pleasure in their way. Now, I could look and see if I could find the Six of Cups. The Six of Cups, the Lord of Pleasure. Sentimental hopes. Now, that's one thing that we realize, is that when we say that we have sentimental hopes, it doesn't mean it's not emotional. It just means that to some extent they're all tinged with a bit of fantasy. So the fact that you're crowned with this means you've been honored by your ability to suffice or to do these things. You're a good example for other people who can, how would you say, can benefit from some of the sentimental fantasies we may spend our life pursuing. You show them a way to benefit in a deeper way from just being amused. All right? And for a lot of people, they're looking at life as if they were in a balloon looking out. And you're showing people how to be involved and to derive pleasure from that. So I think that's a good mission. But it does show you that you're crowned by your ability to do that, to awaken the adventure in everyone, to get beyond sentimental fantasy. And that is important, you know. One of the things that you're able to teach to people, and I'm talking about your mission a lot in this reading because that seems to be the governing thing. You teach them not to hang out in the past. And to only think about it was terrific once or whatever, which a lot of people can do. They don't want to get older. They don't want the responsibility. I think one of the things psychologically we all have to deal with is that we never lose either our 6-year-old or our baby, and we never lose, in particular, our 13-year-old, right at the point of initiation. You see what I mean? Whether it's 12 or 13. We never lose that child, and sometimes our emotion will make us revert to the child, both in enjoyment and in anger, you know. But you have that ability to be able to know when that person's operating in their child. And you can be the parent they need, or you can tell them how to deal with the parent they hate, you know. Even though that parent may be gone, people are still reverting to the child. You see. But I think that the fact that this is crowning you is your ability to see the problem in individuals that you are helping and guiding or teaching. See what I mean? To some extent, this card comes into play. It isn't that we kill off our 13-year-old, you see, but initiation allows us to consciously mature and go on. And to some extent, it's dying to the old life and being born to the new, you know. But I think that resurrection seems to be a big word in the culture that we live in for a lot of people, but they don't necessarily understand it. Conversion is another big word relative to this. See what I mean? So my feeling is that I would then go on to this card, which is going to be, as you see yourself, is the King of Cups upside down. It's an emotional issue. Cups is always going to put it in the emotional issue. And in this upside down position, what I said was that if it represented a tremendous amount of human behavior that is obnoxious, that is manipulative and stealing and fuzzing people's brains and stuff, in your opinion of yourself, you are the person who recognizes that character and protects people from it. And that's a form of healing. Whether you heal the character or not is relative to the story. But for the individual that you're advising, you can tell them, don't go there if you think it's a scam. You see what I mean? So sometimes the only way some of us get to know what a scam is to have been scammed or have your apartment robbed or something like that. And we go, oh, I understand. But up until that point, we've been living in a kind of la-la land, you know what I mean? But I think that when you're in the position that you've elected to put yourself into, which is being a guide for other people, being a teacher and a healer, to some extent, your ability to see patterns in behavior that are not good for the person you're talking to, you can give them some kind of sensitive advice on how to do that. And as you see yourself, that's your function. As other people see you in the Queen of Swords, to some extent, it really means a feminine intuition to reach out and control forces in the world that could be destructive or unhealthy. And I think that if that's their opinion of you, they're going to come to you for advice. But I think that's because of this whole reading. It's showing that you have accepted a mission in this. It's probably from, several past lives we would go to. But I'm interested now in seeing this card, which is your hopes and fears. And it's the four of, coins, you might say. But it's like the Lord of earthly power. So when you see that this is in a position about your hopes and fears, it's not just how you operate in the game. It's how other people play the game that you're involved in. And power, in general, we look at as an attribute of each of the four suits. So that you can have power in the military, power in the religion, power in government, you know what I mean? Power in business. And here we're talking about power in business, to some extent, But it's like, the one thing that in your hopes and your fears is not just that you become successful and make money, which somebody might say would be a way of looking at that in a general way. But when you're looking out there and you see the whole community you exist in, or much of that community, totally devoted to the abstraction of money and the power that money brings, you know instinctively that this can be very damaging to people. It can be rewarding, but it can go like that, like a shot, and people begin to find themselves unable to play either in or out of the game because they've accepted the game as their reality. And when you come along as a healer, because you've known about hopes and fears relative to the game, you can find a way to speak to them as a healer and either tell them to change the game or to be able to be a person who doesn't exist only because of the game. I don't know if that makes it terribly clear to you, but my feeling is, because of your nature as a healer, I can call this your hopes and fears, but it's their hopes and fears. And why you can help them is because you understand human hopes and fears. You know what I mean? But the game business is a big energy sucker. I've already told you about the final card here because it's really a recognition and it's a re-recognition of your own initiation. Your initiation could have happened earlier in life or even in another life, but you're reaffirming it. And as you're able to do it, so you know that you can talk to other people and convince them that they can reaffirm their initiation, partly because they can get out of the games. That's how you look at it. Now, if I continue with the way I've been doing the readings, what I usually do is I'll take the next 3 cards and I'll say that if we have come to this point by stepping through this gateway, that's where we are now. What is the next? This is within the next 3 months, so this would take us into the spring, right? So this is what's going to happen. Then I'll put 2 cards out, and we can choose one to make this thing happen favorably. That clear? All right, so the first card I'm going to put out here, we're into cups again. It's the 5 of Cups, and it's called a loss of pleasure. Okay? Now it's important that we understand where this is going to be an awareness, all right? And then we've got 2 more cards coming up. The Queen of Pentacles, which has an essence that deals with this, okay? And the 7 of Wands. We started out with a wand. You see what I mean? This is the 7 of Wands, and this is called the Lord of Valor. See what I mean? Now, if I'm looking at this, the first thing I should do is read about what they're telling us the next step out the door is going to be. Okay? So that's going to be Cups again, right? 7, is it? No, 5.
5 of Pentacles.
Whoops. 5 of Cups, right?
Cups.
It's in a pentacle, but it's cups.
Oh, I see.
All right. Now, that's another thing that I didn't mention to you about the tarot, this particular tarot deck, is that each one of these geometric forms in numbers also has its own emotional vibration, according to the older tradition. And it can take you into like architecture and geometry and whatever. But each one of them has a symbolic meaning. So if you're doing 5, it's the 5 senses that we call the normal physical senses. If we go into 6, it's like blending the spiritual and the physical. If we go into 7, it's opening up to the other 2 senses, being and knowing. All of them emphasize the point of bringing in information and anchoring it in the truth in the center. So that's why the cards are showing us these geometric forms. And the 5 of Cups in this position is saying that there's going to be the revelation of some imperfection. You're going to have partially rewarded hopes, but there's a kind of mixed blessing in this situation upcoming, and it probably has something to do relatively with a person you respect or love very much. They're either going to depart or they're going to do something you don't approve of. Okay? So to some extent, it's you operational, but it's going to be relative to another individual's activity. Okay? It has to do with family. So somewhere within the family, you're going to feel called upon to do some healing, and you're going to feel called upon to advise someone who might have given you advice. Okay. It's like if your father was a preacher, can you give him advice? You know, that kind of thing. But that's you become mature. You become the parent. You become the adult. Okay, and it just says that this is it's going to happen. It's going to require adjustment, and it's going to require that you more or less take over some kind of responsibility. Okay, it says generally favorable. Thank you very much. Now, when we look at this, my feeling is, if you had to make a choice, what choice would you make, just looking at the 2 cards?
Queen of Pentacles.
Now, you know what I'm going to tell you?
What?
I'm going to tell you to go with this one, because you're already the Queen of Pentacles. You're already the master of your own fortune. That's what Pentacles is about. See what I mean? So to some extent, you have hopes and fears in the money way, or in the game. Right? But you've already mastered that. And other people come to you for the advice as if you had been initiated already. See what I mean? So my feeling is, you can choose this. You already got it. But this is the one that I think is the gift. And partly because the challenge to you here at the very beginning was in wands, not in money. You see what I mean? It's in governance systems. Okay? And my feeling is that with the little word on the card that gives us a clue, it's called the Lord of Valor. Now, what is valor? I mean, we all have to run to the dictionary, find out. But valor is something that you gain from having been in the game or in the war or whatever. You survive and you're admirable. See what I mean? So to some extent, what makes you the healer you are is your ability to survive. Do you understand what I mean? And that you learn enough not only from just surviving, but you can teach other people how to emotionally survive. Now, this is the card that I would recommend in your choice, because when I said there were two cards up here, choose one to make this activity happen, my feeling was that you were already the Queen of Pentacles, just as you were already the Queen of Swords. Two of these things about being in the public eye, you know what I mean? So I think this, you don't have to wish this into being. You are already that. You're the agency for this, you know? And to some extent, it's because you've learned about the lessons about money. You've learned enough to be an advisor and a healer to other people. Now, the other card that I would have said would need to be the choice, because that's how I'm guided, is the Lord of Valor, the Seven of Wands. And to some extent, you know, I have to go back and look at the page, because it's important that we just say to ourselves, okay, this one's happened in this very particular position. Now, what is it that's forcing us to do this? In a way, it's like saying, look at me, look at me. The moment of decision is the first line that I see. Courageous opposition. You're marching in the streets. Triumph over appropriate odds. Success over adversity. Do you remember what I said all along about games? And in particular about the game of swords or guns and the game of money. See what I mean? Part of what you understand and part of what calls you into activity a lot of times is a kind of oppression of the games of these two things in the public sphere, and how it affects individuals that you know or that know you. You know what I mean? And they may come to you for advice, all right? So to some extent, with this emotional situation, it's going to put you in a family way and more in a position of being in charge in the family situation, all right? But you're going to notice that there's a parallel with so many other people you know that they're doing family change too. And so to some extent, this is called the Lord of Valor. It means being able to perform in a way that is uplifting to you and encouraging to other people. Not just that you're the hero and they're only going to follow you dumbly. You illuminate the hero in them. And you say to them, look, nobody ever said life was fair. It's a matter of improvisation. How you deal with this. And what I say to people so often when I'm, because of my background, people used to joke with us about being in the theater. And the teacher that I remember said to me, don't ever get dramatic unless they pay you for it. So it's like, if you're problem solving, you're consciously solving the problem. If you're problem dramatizing, you're looking for an audience. And I think that the cards are telling me that you're going to find people coming to you who are problem dramatizing. They are traumatized. And they're going to be asking you for direction. And some of it's going to be within your family, but it's also going to be in the general populace, because there's a certain kind of anxiety involved. All right? When you open to the idea that you were a healer from how many lives, and the reason we're in this life is to some extent to heal whatever we were in another life, you know? But my feeling is that there's a certain level, psychological level, to the current times we're living in. And it isn't just that they need to come to you as the doctor and you give them a pill and it cures them and they go away. What you give them is the seed of the hero within. And that's the valor. You see what I mean? It isn't like you say to them, oh, I'll give you the cup and you can be the hero and put it on your nightstand or something. You look at them and you go, grab them by both ears, and you say, you are your own hero. And when they awaken to that hero within, that's the initiation. Again, and how many times do we go through it? You know what I mean? But we do have to be reminded that we are our own hero. And to some extent, it's like I say to people at times, when I'm looking at Christian religion, sermons, and I hear somebody on the mountain saying to me, in the book, it says, as I am the way and the light, follow me, etc. What was actually said was, as I am the way and the light, so are you. You awaken the God in everyone. We are the way. And when we do card readings, very often my suggestion to people is that you do a reading on a particular day, whether it's your birthday or some other event that was very significant to you. And I think that's what ancient people used to do. Part of their ritual was on the anniversary of the birth and the death of an ancestor. And a lot of times one ancestor would be here and the whole rest of the family for many generations would be in the cave around them. There was always a woman oracle in the cave or near the cave, and a priest who interpreted what she said. And they would have done what we do with the cards on the anniversary of the birth or the death, if they're trying to contact an individual or your own person. You do a reading in a particular day, and the cards become a portable oracle. You do have a mission in this life. We are connected to past lives, whether our various religions want to believe it or not. Part of my understanding is we are always the way for revelation, for illumination, for courage, for valor, if you will. We become an example. And I think that when you live in a time when there's a great deal of fear, and there's a great deal of the obviousness of the games, which you were pointing out here, I think that it's very important for us to be able to know that we are the way. And it's very important to know that we are the emotional response to everything it is becoming. In other words, it's experimenting. It's into its improvisation all the time. It's the dog, it's the cat, it's you, it's the tree, whatever. And it's looking to see if there's anything it cannot become.